What a day, everyone. For our last session, I'd like to welcome Qualys Vice President of Product Management, Naeem Islam. We will discuss how to assess cloud risk, prioritization, and risk reduction. Take it away, Naeem.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name is Naeem Islam. I'm the Vice President of Product Management at Qualys for the Total Cloud product. Today, I'm going to be talking about prioritizing risk in a fragmented cloud. Last year, Qualys introduced the Enterprise TruRisk Platform, a unified platform for measuring, communicating, and eliminating cyber risk. Now, what does that mean? So one of the critical parts of our TruRisk platform is to be able to assess your known and unknown assets, then do vulnerability and configuration management to assess risk, then do risk remediation to sort of fix what you found, and then threat detection response to actively monitor threats, and finally compliance to keep up to date with all the different compliance mandates that are out there. All of these steps together are part of the Qualys Enterprise TruRisk platform. For asset management, it's very important for us to know both the internal and external attack surface included with the business context. Then it's very important to be able to prioritize vulnerabilities and misconfigurations so you know what to fix. And that leads to the step for remediating vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. And that's best done through automation. Then there is this step to monitor and detect and respond to threats on an ongoing basis. And finally, to drive compliance through various mandates like PCI DSS and HIPAA, it's important to be able to generate those reports and make those part of the platform as well. A couple of other emerging areas that are very important to the TruRisk platform is the ability to detect supply chain attacks through, for example, that may come through open source software or OSS, and also to ingest third-party risk information to be part of this holistic, broader platform. And finally, it's important to be able to encapsulate all of this as part of a three-step process to measure your risk, to communicate it to the appropriate stakeholders in the organization, and finally, to eliminate that risk. That is Qualys TruRisk. Now, in the context of the cloud, it's really important to understand that the data that you collect for assessing risk will come from a variety of different sources. For example, posture or CSPM, through vulnerabilities on workloads through CWP, or real-time threats through CDR. Once that's collected, there's this whole notion of being able to normalize and correlate these with threat intel to be able to then finally prioritize the risk that you need to look at. That is part of the overall mechanisms that we've built to quantify risk and then to communicate and eliminate it. Now let's look a little bit at what's happening in the cloud in terms of the risk, the threat landscape. Last year, we published the Qualys TruRisk Insights white paper, where we talked about the leading causes of cloud breaches, which were vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and malware. And we're finding that a very large number of CIS benchmarks often fail when corporations start adopting the public cloud, whether it's AWS, Azure, or Google. We're finding that CIS benchmarks often fail 50% on average. We're also seeing that the Log4j vulnerability that's been around for a very long time are still left unpatched. And finally, crypto miners are a growing threat. And what we're seeing is that malware, which really wasn't that prevalent in the public cloud, is becoming more and more common. Now, given this sort of threat landscape where you have vulnerabilities, misconfigurations, and malware, clearly there's a need for a solution to put it all together and give you help you both find the risks for you in the public cloud and help you mitigate them. So We introduced Total Cloud at the end of 2022, Total Cloud 1.0, and we had the following four features as part of it. We had cloud security posture management, cloud workload protection, CDR, which is cloud detection and response, and Kubernetes and container security, or KCS. Cloud security posture management is all about finding misconfigurations and remediating misconfigurations. Part of that is also IAC security, which is infrastructure as code security. What IAC security allows you to do is to really detect misconfigurations before they're deployed in, say, Terraform or CloudFormation templates. These are the mechanisms used to deploy your infrastructure in the public cloud. So IAC security allows you to scan these templates so that you can catch misconfigurations before they're actually deployed. This is part of our shift to left strategy. Cloud workload protection is really about detecting vulnerabilities in workloads. And that is really an extension of our VMDR product, which has flexible scanning mechanisms. So multiple different scanning mechanisms for scanning for vulnerabilities, both using agents or agentless, through the network, or with APIs. Cloud detection and response is about detecting real-time threats, and we do that using deep learning AI. And finally, there's Kubernetes and container security. These are modern mechanisms for structuring applications, and we discover, track continuously from development, from build time to runtime for security issues in containers. That was what we announced in Total Cloud 1.0. With 2.0, we've made some major additions to this platform, as you can see here. Now, cloud security, if you look at CNAPP solutions, cloud native application protection platforms, most vendors ignore the broader view of what cloud security is about. In Total Cloud 2.0, we've included SaaS security posture management. That includes SaaS applications. And as many of you are aware, the SEC has mandated that SaaS security is an important part of your security posture, and organizations must take care of that as well. So that is now part of our Total Cloud 2.0 platform. And that's important because now you have one way to look at all of your security in the cloud, not just public cloud infrastructure, but also SaaS applications. We've also added OSS, or open source security. That's part of our mechanism to tighten up the supply chain so that vulnerabilities don't come from open source software without that easily. So we can scan open source software to make sure that we can detect vulnerabilities when they're coming through the supply chain. Putting it all together and to be able to prioritize risk with one single view, we have introduced True Risk Insights. And True Risk Insights takes data from all the different capabilities I've shown here, integrates them to provide one single prioritized view of risk to help you prioritize what matters most first. Now, this is important. What we've seen in the industry is typically siloed views of prioritization for vulnerabilities, for posture, and for threats, each being done independently. However, in Total Cloud, we've combined them so that you can really cut through the noise and figure out and focus on the risks that matter most to your enterprise. Now, there is something that's also very important that we've realized for our customers is that there is a need to have a flexible subscription model. What I mean by that is that I talked about 5 different capabilities: CSPM, SSPM, CDR, container, and CWP. But in our platform, you could buy what are known as Qualys units, buy a bunch of them, and then you can allocate them to the capabilities that matter most to you. And then you can reallocate them over time without coming back to us, without going back to procurement. It's part of the package. And these QLUs can be reassigned to any of the functions. So, for example, you may start with, say, most of it is given to, say, CDR, but over time, you may want to reallocate some of the QLUs that you've given to CDR to CWP, and you're able to do that as part of the QLU mechanism that's embedded as part of the total cloud platform. And so you can really, as your needs evolve over time, you can reallocate these QLUs to satisfy the business needs that you would have for security in the cloud. Now, let me talk a little bit about TrueRisk Insights. This is a critical part of our offering. And given that the cloud is a complex system, being able to prioritize risk and focus on what matters most is absolutely critical. And TrueRisk Insights really breaks down this siloed view by creating a single prioritized view of risk. So if you look at the different capabilities that are available, you have CWP, CDR, misconfigurations, Kubernetes, and SSPM. Each of them is looking at independent priorities on what's important. For example, you might have, high priority vulnerabilities deep in the organization, and there may be a similar vulnerability that's exposed to the internet, but may have active threats on it. Clearly, even though the vulnerabilities may be prioritized the same way, in the broader context of what's in the deployment of your cloud, you would obviously prioritize those that are being actively exploited ahead of those that are perhaps deeper in the enterprise and not exposed to the internet. So one of the other areas that we have also brought context is in the management of vulnerabilities using TrueRisk scores for assets. And we've added not just the criticality of the severity of the vulnerability, but also business asset context, as well as whether the vulnerability is being exploited in the wild. So if it's a critical asset and it's being exploited in the wild, and there are two different assets with where one is not as critical of an asset, the one that is a critical asset will be prioritized ahead. This again provides another level of granularity in helping you prioritize what matters most. Now, taking it to a broader context beyond vulnerabilities, what TrueRisk Insights does is that it takes all the different contributing factors from these different capabilities and creates insights. On the right, I show some of these insights listed. So, for example, you have a critical vulnerability with a known exploit which is on a publicly exposed VM. Now, you have another asset that with a vulnerability which has command and control or C2 beaconing going to a malicious IP. Clearly, that's something that it looks like it's been already exploited, needs to be taken care of immediately. You may have a high permission publicly exposed asset with a critical vulnerability. Now, that's troublesome because if that asset were to get compromised, then those permissions could be used to do lateral movement within the organization, and that could also be very harmful. And finally, endpoints with vulnerabilities that have end-of-life software and have cloud secrets. So as you can see, these four different examples show how different contributing factors come together to provide more context so you can prioritize your view of risk and you can fix what matters most first. Again, taking the context in which vulnerabilities are found and these risks are assessed is absolutely critical. And TrueRisk Insights is a powerful way for us to prioritize risk for our customers so they can fix what matters most first. Now, let me give you another example of how this prioritization might work. So if you look at TrueRisk in action, you might start with a very large number of vulnerabilities that are exposed to the internet. But as you take more and more context into consideration, the ones that matters most, by the time, for example, you're at the right here where you have DNS exfiltration, there are only two assets. So if you look at the filtering effect, that as you add more and more contributing factors, you'd end up getting only two out of 128,318 that have exposed vulnerabilities, but two that need to be looked at immediately. So this will help you focus on a couple of things and then address those first before you go on and continue to fix other issues within the enterprise. So again, True Risk Insights is a very powerful mechanism to figuring out what you can do in terms of what needs to get fixed. Now let me go through the various functions that we have within Total Cloud 2.0. We have Cloud Workload Protection, which is a fundamental mechanism for securing workloads. Now, what's really important about our implementation of CWP is that we provide 4 different scanning mechanisms: agent-based, network-based assessment, snapshot-based assessment, and API-based assessment. Now, each of them provides, if you will, together a 360 view of the vulnerability of an asset. Snapshot based typically runs, it's agentless, so you don't have to have any agent installed, but they typically run every 24 hours. Agent based, you have an agent that gets installed, and in our system, the assessment runs in runtime every 4 hours. Network based is a perimeter scan, and API based assessments can be used to get scanning done started very, very quickly, because it uses the existing systems management agent, for example, in AWS, the SSM agent, to get information to do vulnerability assessment. All of these 4 mechanisms connect to our Six Sigma accuracy backend, which has a database that we curate that has low false positives and low false negatives, meaning we don't miss things that we miss far fewer things, and we don't have our customers chasing vulnerabilities that may not be important to look at. But what this does is make sure that all the time that your workload is running, there are different mechanisms to keep the vulnerability information fresh and safe. Cloud security posture management. Now, one of the if you recall, when I started the presentation, I talked about some of the major causes of breaches is things get misconfigured, and cloud security posture management is one of our key mechanisms for making sure that the posture, that the controls are all configured based on best practices. And with this, with this capability, we're able to see misconfigurations across all of your assets. We have 1,000 plus out-of-the-box controls, even Qualys best practices and CIS standards. We support 30 plus compliance mandates such as PCI, DSS, and HIPAA, and complete coverage of the CIS benchmarks. And one of our speakers is also from CIS. We collaborated extensively with CIS on new benchmarks. So, and we try to stay ahead of the game, and also participate in the community to make sure that the right benchmarks are being developed. You can automatically alert, ticket, and remediate misconfigurations, and we have one-click misconfigurations for many highly visible controls. And of course, there's also automation for remediation using our Qflow mechanism, which is a no-code, low-code mechanism for generating scripts for remediation. Kubernetes and container security is absolutely critical to the public cloud. And we actually support security for Kubernetes and containers all the way from the build to the runtime. That means is that at build time in the CI/CD pipeline, we will be scanning for vulnerabilities. When containers are in the registry, we will scan for vulnerabilities, as well as at runtime when you have containers actively running on nodes, we will scan for vulnerabilities. There is a very unique feature of our container security product that when we scan the registries for containers, we also scan for malware and secrets. And we scan for malware using a deep learning AI engine that can detect malware mutants that cannot be detected by signatures alone. So that is a very unique feature that we've added so that prior to running something, the container, you can scan it in the registry for vulnerabilities, for secrets, as well as for retaining malware. And what that might look like is that if the malware mutates, it'll have a different hash, but is likely to have similar behavior. This case is very common as we're seeing millions of malware variants and typically about 1 million a day. And those are difficult to detect with signatures. There's simply not enough time to generate a signature and propagate it. So a different mechanism is needed. We use deep learning AI. And with that, we're able to detect these different hashes, but with similar behavior, because we're looking at the package, if you will, using deep learning AI to detect similar behavior. Cloud detection and response is our mechanism to detect threats in real time, monitoring the network and cloud logs. And we're able to detect malware that may be downloaded, beaconing attacks, cryptojacking and crypto miners, suspicious communication, and unauthorized activity. Now, I'll say a couple of things that are very important here. First, we have seen a very large number of crypto miners or cryptojacking occurring in in public clouds. This is a recent trend, and that's it's quite interesting. But it what we're going to see over time is more and more active elements like crypto miners and malware showing up in the public cloud. The second piece is that this information from this capability is very critical to helping prioritize um, and providing input into true risk insights, because you can finally match a vulnerability with some active exploitation of it by looking at CDR information like unauthorized activity. And just to give an example of beaconing activity, beaconing activity can be very stealthy. It can be periodic, and using deep learning AI, our CDR capability is able to detect beaconing activity, malicious beaconing activity from an asset, so you can isolate it. SaaS security posture management is a very important addition to Total Cloud 2.0. Now, as I mentioned, this is a unique integration for us. Um, it expands the notion of what the cloud means because it takes security to another plane, if you will, providing unified security across SaaS apps and cloud infrastructure. And we support a host of SaaS applications, of course, M365, Salesforce, Zoom, Slack being some of them. Very important that we are able to support those applications. And it gives you a view into the data that's in these applications and the users that are accessing the data. So if there are mismatches there, you'll be able to tell it. Now, we we think that this integration is absolutely critical to have a single view of all of your assets, but also a single view of risk in the cloud. To recap, for all of our capabilities in Total Cloud 2.0, we think we have a very a powerful and differentiated solution protecting over 33 million workloads globally. It's a unified solution that goes across both SaaS applications and cloud infrastructure. It provides a flexible scanning mechanism for the highest level of accuracy for vulnerability detection, which includes snapshot, API, agent, and network-based scanning to get the best coverage and with continuous assessments using Six Sigma accuracy, our own database of vulnerabilities for low false positive and low false negatives. And it's important that I point out that we have both agent-less, like snapshot, and agent-based vulnerability scanning, a very powerful combination together. Instant protection that can detect unknown and known threats quickly at runtime using AI, And the unknown part is something I've already talked about, because there are so many variants that occur and so many um, uh, mutants, if you will, of different types of attacks and malware, that the only way to detect them is using AI. And we use deep learning AI. True Risk Insights, which brings together data from all these different capabilities together to create a single prioritized view of risk. And our modular and flexible subscription mechanism that allows you to deploy modules you want, when you want, and move them around as your needs evolve. Now, one of the uh, very exciting parts of what we have to offer, and I'm going to be talking about now, is that given that True Risk Insights are a critical part of understanding your security posture in the cloud, we are now offering cloud security reports. And you'll see a call at the end of this presentation where you can register to get a free trial and your own report. I'm now going to show you some example reports and what types of information might be available in that report. It's pretty exciting. So let me try to go through it and show you what we find. So our Total Cloud True Risk Insight report, powered by our deep learning AI. The first one of the first things, obviously, we're going to show is an inventory of the assets and your accounts and what regions they occur in, just to give you a perspective of what we can see, because of course you can't protect what you can't see. That's the first thing, inventory summary. Then the second thing is like a high level summary of the insights, like how many workloads are exposed to the internet. How many known exploited CISA vulnerabilities do you have? And how many container images have secrets? Um, what is the count of my ephemeral resources? How many serverless functions are violating CIS policy? And how much of my storage is publicly accessible? These are just some of the things, the summary findings that would be in the report. Now, what's quite interesting is that we then dig one level deeper. So here we show that of the assets exposed to the internet, there are different protocols that enable these assets to reach, like FTP, SSH, RDP, HTTP, Telnet, and HTTPS. And some of these assets have different kinds of active threats: SSH brute forcing, RDP, C2 over DNS, C2 over HTTP, and suspicious communication. There's also a different view which shows for the assets exposed to the internet, what the technologies that are on the assets. And finally, here we summarize for the workloads and the protocols, what are the CVEs that are visible on the assets themselves. So you get a good view of not only the workloads, the protocol, the type of threat that's been detected, and the CVE. So it gives you a sort of a holistic view of what's happening in your um, public cloud infrastructure. This is just a view from the dashboard, and I'm going to give a demo uh, now, so I can show you the product itself, and then I'll come back to show you how you can register to get a trial and your personal copy of a True Risk Insights report. So this is our dashboard, and as you can see here, the dashboard shows at the top level 6 widgets: unmanaged workloads, vulnerable instances, CSPM critical, misconfigurations, instances with threats, containers with drift, and vulnerabilities on publicly exposed through perimeter scanning, vulnerabilities found through perimeter scanning on assets. That's the first level. Then you can see a score, a true risk with FlexScan. This is the CWP score on individual vulnerabilities on assets. Then you have the True Risk Insights, which is the single prioritized view of risk. So, which is a critical innovation. I'll be showing where that leads shortly. Then SaaS compliance posture. Now, with SaaS applications, one of the most important things we do is assess the posture of those apps. Have they been configured properly? And as you can see here, for example, that this is failing quite a few. The Office 365 is failing quite a few of the controls. And you can see the same with Salesforce. So you can go there and look at what the issue are and remediate it. I'll do that shortly for these different controls. I just want to show you the top level of what the assets look like. Then you can also see that we have more widgets describing different views into your public cloud infrastructure, including CIS compliance, AWS CIS benchmark compliance, AWS NIST compliance, and then containers with distributions of vulnerability severity. So at the high level, you get to see at a glance kind of where you are. And a couple of things to again stress is that you've got the SaaS posture here in the same dashboard, and you have this comprehensive view of risk based on True Risk Insights. Now, let's look at one of the True Risk Insights so you get a perspective of what information is available. So there are 10 in this True Risk Insight. And as you can see here, once you click on that, this is what you see. You see the contributing factors, which shows that the EBS volume is not encrypted. It has a critical vulnerability. It's publicly exposed and it's exploitable. And there are 10 such assets, and you can see that this lists them. So what's really interesting is that we not only give you a sense of, you know, where it fits in terms of the context, but we break down the contributing factors so you get a good sense of why that asset needs to be taken care of. Now let's look at vulnerable instances. So if you go down that and click into that, you will see that it lists all the instances with vulnerabilities, including those that are confirmed. So the entire list is here. You can peruse this and decide, if you need to take actions there. Then there's also instances with threats. As you can see here, there are 3 such instances. For this one, if you click on one of the instances, it takes you in the CDR component. And once you go there, you can get quite a bit of detail on the threat itself, whether there's malware. As you can see, there was 3 instances of malware: backdoor, Trojan, ransomware, command and control. There's unauthorized activity as well as suspicious communication. So as you look through, the dashboard and you navigate it, you get a high-level view, a single prioritized view of risk, and then you can drill down and get more detailed information for the different components and why they're contributing to the single prioritized view. You also get this unified cloud view with SaaS posture management all integrated to create a simple view of what is happening in your public cloud infrastructure. So now let me go back to the presentation one more time. So I showed you the demo. Now, we'd love for you to register for a trial and get your True Risk Insights report. I have a QR code here, which may be easier to use, but I've also included the URL. I hope you had a good understanding of Total Cloud 2.0, and looking forward to having you trial our product and giving you insights into your public cloud infrastructure. Thank you very much.